This is the Hotel Chittenden in Columbus, Ohio. We're looking at it not long before it was demolished in 1973. This is what it used to look like. So we're told that all of this was basically taken down to a level line just after 1960 is what Wikipedia tells us for when this happened. You can see the different color here as they would have filled in to remove so much of the splendor going on in the upper reaches of this hotel. And I have insinuated, I suppose, that this was going on throughout the taking of the old world, where they were decapitating many of the church-style buildings, and they were also leveling off and taking off the ornamentation from the upper areas of many of these old world structures, and I think much of that went on at a very early time. So let's see if we can reach further back in time and take a look at some of these buildings before they were altered or destroyed. Let's look at Columbus, Ohio. On this channel we have covered most of the major cities in this region of the United States: Cincinnati, Cleveland, Dayton, Toledo, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, just finished that one, Louisville, a recent one, Evansville, Chicago yet to be seen. Chicago really is worth a series, so much to see there. But Columbus had to be covered, so here we are. Columbus, the state capital of Ohio. And you can see here the population demographics. Modern day, just under 1 million people. If we jump back to 1900, we're looking at about 125,000 people, and really all of that happening post-Civil War, of course, as usual. And Wikipedia making clear to us that the city was founded in 1812, named after Christopher Columbus, the great voyager who discovered North America. I still believe in that story. They also make a point of it to say, at that time this area was a dense forest land used only as a hunting ground. Thanks for throwing that in. We see that a lot with the narrative. They really steer the narrative and keep your eyes off what we are seeing in these these photos, which provide visual evidence. So as you look into the creation of Columbus, Ohio, 1850, really not much going on. So we're looking at photographs within 50-year period of that time frame, and these are looking very what we might call European. The cities with the very well-worn brick roads. You have the streetcars. So again, we have that disconnection between what we're told and how these cities supposedly took root, and what we're looking at, to our eyes, or to my eye at least, a much older city center. So let's say metropolis, looking and feeling much older and much more well established than that short 50-year time frame. Very interesting chimneys up here. I like those. So we have a bird's eye view, and this is supposedly from 1872. And I mean, we can't really rely too much on the bird's eye view. I think this is a way of skewing what was actually there. I mean, look how gridded these things are, and then you get down close and you see all these houses just penciled in. I mean, who lived in this house? Where's the road to get to these? Are these all outbuildings? These, I mean, predominantly drawings with a few landmarks included. They are helpful, however, if you're doing this kind of research. You can, if you have one with high enough resolution, you can look down the lists at the buildings that they list at that time. and do a search for those buildings. And often you'll find nothing, but often you will find them, and then you will find similar buildings from that time frame, which don't really pop up for whatever reason if you're just doing a general search. So if you're into this research and you want to do some of your own, there's a little tip for you. The bird's eyes can be helpful for finding some of these. Again, looking and feeling like a very old city. Certainly not looking and feeling like it's less than 100 years old as we peer down this main street and look at the streetcars. Let's take a look at the LeVeque Tower. I've also seen it called the Lincoln Tower and the American Insurance Tower. This structure here, supposedly built from 1924 to 1927, a 3-year time period in the Art Deco styling. And there we have an interesting view at night. It must be at Easter or something like that. You can see the ornamentation up top. Look a little closer. I know it's a little bit grainy. This one might be a bit better. Now you can really get a sense for what's going on up here. But you have these angel type figures. You have the fasces rods here bundled up together, and then the little domes. Very interesting architecture. But if we look a little closer and dig a little deeper, we find that it didn't always look like this. We actually have evidence that it was scaled down or scaled back, and you can see what used to be there. This whole statue situation, these eagles, or maybe they're griffins, or maybe they're phoenixes, you decide, were taken down as well, which I find very interesting. You get a nice look at how these go together, and it really is puzzling, if you'll pardon the pun. It looks like a puzzle, but it's puzzling how they made all of these fit in such an amazing way to produce such a result. Really reminding me of a scene from Lord of the Rings when we look a little closer at some of these. And then when we look into the construction photographs, this is what we're given for the 20s. And I mean, that's... I mean, the whole photo, I suppose, is pretty hazy and grainy, but I think that area is worse than this area here. And that's not really giving us much. We're also not seeing any sort of crane or anything poking out. This just seems to me like it's easily forged. The sky not looking natural at all. And here's another construction photo, apparently from that time period. And you can see this looking very well defined, this hotel in the foreground. And then we get closer into here and it all becomes sort of vague. Why is this so much more faded out than here? It has to really raise the questions. There's just not enough information. You know, if you were a teacher and you received a report and you had a student write an essay for you, an essay was 5 words long, that's what you would write on the paper, isn't it? Not enough information. So I think that's where we're at. Here we have the Armory. Beautiful building, castle. No shortage of these in that area of the States. And now we turn to the insane narrative of the insane asylums. And Columbus possessing a beauty. Here we have a drawing. And as we look at a photograph, it's giving us a much better idea of the detail and ornamentation that was on this structure. Massive structure, I might add. Also looking like we're having a very early photo with all these vines growing up it, but you can see, just make out how spectacular these little domes are, and they're all over. There's another one back here, built in what they call the Kirkbride formation. You can see almost looking like a bat, or some sort of, I don't know, what else does that look like? At the tip of an arrow or something like that. Here, this is a very telling photograph of the taking of the old world and the repurposing of what was once there. Because it's really completely illogical that you would build such a structure here at that time period. just to shine a bit more of a spotlight on this structure, they're telling us that this was founded in 1838, then completely rebuilt in 1877. So what you're seeing is from 1877, under the Kirkbride plan, of course. Said to have been the largest building in the US or the world until the Pentagon was completed in 1943. And also notice how they gloss over the current Kirkbride style building. They give us more information on the one that supposedly burnt down in 1868, built in 1863, than they do for this one that was supposedly built in 1877. But they don't give us a start and finish date. And then it becomes the largest building in the world. Unbelievable. I'm just going to stay a little longer on this structure just to give you a sense of what we're looking at here. Interesting, the lower windows shorter than the rest of them. Is there something else going on here? Is this evidence of some sort of mud flood or whatever you want to call it? Spectacular. Alright, moving on. Here we have a nice early crisp photograph of Main Street area. Again, everything looking built out. These looking very old, all this brick styling, looking like something that's been around for a long time. Not 50 years or less, 20 years, whatever you want to call it. The Bigelow Chapel, I believe, located near the cemetery, in the cemetery. You can see entrances going into the ground beneath it here. Very interesting. And looking very ornamented, or ornamental. And here's just one of the buildings from the university. We have a collection of breweries supposedly attributed to the German immigration that happened. We have the Irish and the German, two large populations, we are told, taking root in Columbus, Ohio. These massive structures again, the narrative repeats itself. It's the same thing we see in so many of these cities from this part of the world. The Hoster Brewing. Again, you see all that ornamentation. And the question begs of us to ask, why? Why do we need to build? Why do we need to add the ornamentation? Is it just the flair of the time? I do sometimes see the comments from detractors on my videos say this is just how they were. They were hardworking. They had more time to do the jobs. They were good at what they did. And I don't doubt that they were more skilled. I know they were more skilled. I know that the tradesmen from 100 years ago were much more skilled than we are today. But it still doesn't account for the need to add the ornamentation to every structure that we're looking at. It doesn't account for the need to put this on the corner unless there's some sort of function. And the time frames don't allow for all of these to have gone up the way they did. There's a nice look at one of these streetcars in 1915. That would be mean they're on their way out. Won't be long before we're not using these at all, and they rip out the tracks or pave over the tracks. We're told a very short-lived period of time that these were in use, but I suggest a mode of transportation of the old world, and having had been around for much longer than we're told. And a lot of these look quite old. If you look through the research and a lot of the old photos, looking like a well-cemented part of the infrastructure. A couple different clubs here: Columbus Club, Ohio Club, Franklin Club. Everyone needs a club to be a part of. And I guess we're all a part of this club. Here you have the globe wrapped up in a net with all different races and representations. I find this very interesting. Must be in preparation for maybe some sort of expo or fair. I'm not sure, but I thought I'd include it because I think it's a little suspect and causes some pause for thought. All right. State Savings Association. This would be the third in what we might call Art Deco styling building. You can see the the ornate front entry. Maybe that's been scaled down. Maybe this was much larger entryways than just the door down here. I don't know. That's speculation, but it's interesting. And an interesting look. Postcard from a very early time period, early 20th century. You can see whoever wrote on the postcard is letting us know this is a 12-story building, 13-story building. Very well built out. Again, remember, nothing really going on here till about 1850, and even then not until the 1870s in Columbus. Just not enough time to create that type of infrastructure, in my opinion. Broad Street, Methodist Episcopal, modern day look at the corner of it, just to give you a sense of the weight and beauty of the construction here, and the timelessness of the construction. Spectacular. Also found this First Congregational Church, very grainy postcard, apologize for that. Here we have a modern day photograph, and giving us a good idea of the stonework as well. And then we'll take a closer look at the tower here. And you tell me, is that making any sense for such a structure? This maybe was somehow placed on there, more closer to modern day, I would suggest. Probably having much more ornamentation going on there before. Very interesting looking tower. Again, the timelessness to this construction. And of course it has a pipe organ. This church also sharing the same name as the previous one, which I found odd. Alright, we get to the old City Hall. This one is a real stunner as well. Groundbreaking May 1869. Took them 3 years to build this. It looks like not even 3 years. And then it was destroyed in 1921. So they didn't even get 40 years to enjoy the structure before apparently a fire took it. This is a fantastic photograph, very crisp, showing us the age of the location, giving us a feel that this has been around for hundreds of years and not just a decade or so since the photograph was taken. And they also provide us a sketch of what it looked like or initially, which I think is interesting because it's been decapitated. Again, we see that same pattern repeat itself. And why? Why do that if this building only stood for 40 years? Why the need to remove this portion? There's no logic in it except for to scale it down. Maybe they didn't have the means. I would suggest they did not have the means to demolish some of these structures, but they could scale them down, and I think that's what was going on. Until eventually they had the means to light them on fire, destroy them, demolish them, and here we have the fire. 1921. I'm getting a sense of a residential neighborhood there, looking quite quaint, I would say. Brick paved streets, horse and buggy era. Interesting. This building looking like it could easily be 500 years old at least, or maybe more. Well, they'll tell us it's Richardsonian Romanesque, so it only started in the 1870s with that type of architecture, but I disagree. I think there's that deception is quite obvious. Okay, we come to the courthouse. 2-year construction period. You can see 2 years and 9 days it took them to build this in the 1880s. Demolished in 1974. Of course they're going to demolish this. That's a criminal act. Again, I'd suggest I have better. Here, let's look at a better resolution. 2 years to build this. Again, looking and feeling like what we might consider to be otherworldly. Check out the portholes, the gates, the ornamentation up here. Really worth a nice slow look, this one. The 60s and 70s must have been an awful period for when all this destruction was going on. And there was upheaval too, social upheaval at that time period. So something going on there. energetically at that period of time in human history. Especially in the North American space, but not just in the North American space. This is just a jaw dropper. Look at this chimney. Beautiful structure. No inch left out. Everything getting what it needs. Beautiful. Okay, the Deaf and Dumb Institution. It previously was an asylum, we are told, and used for this purpose apparently. We have an institution for feeble-minded. Not enough apparently over at the asylum. They had to have something separate, built in such a manner. You can see here, back here, some sort of heavily ornamented dome as well. I feel kind of feeble-minded looking at this, trying to wrap my head around the historical narrative. Apologies if that's offensive. It just doesn't add up. It becomes so obvious when you do this research that you're looking at deception. Fire department, of course, beautiful looking roof. They had to add that in on the fire department just for your viewing pleasure if you ever tend to tilt your head back. The Great Southern Hotel, another beautiful crisp photograph. We have a bit of a taper coming down the street here. Quite the ornate entrance here and here. Brickwork really impeccable. Column capital type looks here. This is all very spectacular. And we get a hazy look at the interior of this hotel. Nice looking light fixture, ornamentation, elaborate ornamentation, ticking all the boxes of what we see everywhere we look in the old world. Alright, the post office and the Hartman Theater. I'm going to look at the Hartman Theater, get a bit of a closer look. You can tell what's going on up top here is extra special. And of course the interior, also beautiful, elaborate. So much to eye candy. And look here, you can see all the ornamentation going up. Very, very difficult to duplicate this type of look. I would like to bring up the immigration issue as well. We see in so many of these cities, especially in this area of the States, they say the Irish and the German were coming here in droves. Well, if you look at any of the old world German cities, they're all old world German cities, so many of them were destroyed in the wars of the 20th century, but they were building these structures at the same time period as these were supposedly going up as well in the late 1800s. So, what we're told. Again, what I suggest is it's a repurposing. And I haven't really focused off-continent on this channel too much. I'm going to try to make an effort to do more of those videos where we look off-continent, because the majesty of some of the old world cities of Europe and even Australia and South Africa and South America is really jaw-dropping, and so much of it out of place in some of the regions to what we would expect. We saw this already, the Chittenden. The Deschler Wallach would be, I believe, this building here next to the tower, but that we already looked at as well. And that whole bustling thoroughfare with all the signage, right? The aftermarket signage, let's say, it did not really look like a part of these buildings, like they had to put signs everywhere so you knew exactly where to go. Opticians, interesting. Alright, we have a county jail, not to be confused with the state penitentiary, which we'll take a look at the end of the slideshow here. We're getting close to the end here, we still have a few. Carnegie had his paws on the library here, apparently. One of thousands, of course, that went up at the time. And more gentlemen's clubs, needing 2 structures. Old world structure repurposed into a hospital. Old world structure repurposed into a hospital. Why? Why on earth are you building a hospital in such a manner? Why did they need to put this on? You think they would just close that off at a 90-degree angle and call it good? Doesn't make sense, does it? We have a high school, which could have been a government building, or a bank, I suppose, but it was a high school. You have the track there in the background. What I was told as I was searching is this is the first Union Station, not to be confused with the Union Station we'll be taking a closer look at shortly. This is the Orton Hall. You can see it really screams old world at you. We'll take a closer look at this area here. And you can see you've got a different head poking out between each of these little openings all the way around the top there. Really a unique, interesting building. So much going on there. You wouldn't know looking at this photo that that's what is going on there. So much of the detail that we're missing, especially the interiors on these buildings. We're really just scratching the surface as we go through these files. And I do my best to find as many of these for you as possible and lay it all out there for you to get a look. There's the post office in modern day, reminding you of the texture of the materials being used, which is often difficult to convey in a postcard like this. We're told this is also the post office. Couldn't find much else on it. Savings and loan, or the savings and trust. And we're going to trust our savings with these institutions. I take a modern day look and just give you an idea again of that ornamentation going on up top there. And of course, again, you have to ask the question why. Another look at that St. Francis Hospital, because I think it's worth another look. Wrap your head around it, friends. Does that make sense to build? We don't build hospitals like this these days whatsoever. It's completely illogical. How many rooms do you miss by indenting the building like this? You're decreasing your capacity. Another hospital, St. Anthony's this time, with the cupola. And one more look at the St. Francis Hospital, also called the Medical College, the Starling Medical College. So Columbus really not disappointing, providing us quite a bit of old world majesty. Not a fan of the state capitol though in Ohio. I really expected much more compared to many of the state capitals I've seen. Looking rather plain. I mean, it did have a dome, as we can see in this rendering. Or at least the rendering is telling us it did. And it looks like it did. This not looking right. Something here not looking right at all about the structure, but taking away that old world majesty as well as they do that. Making it just a little bit less interesting, a little bit less eye-catching. But it is still a spectacular structure. And dating back to a very early time period. They're dating it back to 1839 to 1861. One of the oldest working state houses in the States. And Wikipedia providing us with a drawing of supposedly 1865 at the State House, a public viewing of Abraham Lincoln's casket. Less than about 20,000 people supposedly living in Columbus at the time. So make with that of you will. And we do have one interior shot here for you of the rotunda. And a look at the interior staircase with all the magnificent stonework and what we might call woodwork, gilded gold leaf paintings on the ceiling, 1830s to 1860s. Alright, we have the state penitentiary, which no longer stands. Also dating back to that early time period, having that real castle feel. So yeah, really supposedly built in 1834. We are told this thing was built. Demolished 1997. Here you can see the brick roads in front. Another beautiful large structure. Here is the theater in the Olatangi Park, Columbus, Ohio. Also like to remind you, if you're from the area, know anything more about the area, please add your flavor to the comment section. I always appreciate it. I think other viewers do as well. And if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button. I try to bring you as much of the old world as I can, and I do have quite a bit in my archives here for you, so I'll keep bringing you videos moving forward. This one says it's a Union, and finally we get to the Union Station in Columbus, supposedly designed by Daniel Burnham, the architect. Opened in 1897. Looks like construction started in 1893, or planning started in 1893. They don't really say for sure. This thing was demolished in between October 1976 and September 1979. So about as long to demolish as it took to build. They did move this section of it, and it's featured, looks like, in a park or some sort of courtyard open area. Again, if you know any more about the area, please add your 2 cents. I always appreciate it. We do have some shots before they did the deed, showing us some of the interior. Here we have a rendering. This looking like something out of what we might consider to be ancient Rome, right? Very spectacular structure. Smacks of the old world. High-res photograph for you. Let's get a little closer for you. Let's take a look at what we got going on up here. Again, you have those sort of mirror type things like these. I don't know what those are. There's something to do with energy, I think. These things here. You have one there, one there. You see them a lot on a lot of these old world structures. Lots of cherubs going on up here though, and little faces. More faces, different faces here. I think there's so much more to this story, this old world. We have so much more to learn. Here they are moving that part of the structure. And a drawing of the interior, and you can see, even in the drawing, you can see how very old world this building was. Very dilapidated looking Union Station. How do you ever let something like this get to this state? You have to wonder. It has to be through neglect, intentional neglect. It's the only answer I can come up with. Alright, and this is supposedly the second Union Station, so previous to the one we just looked at. And apparently this one is built from 1873 to 1875, and it gets the old wrecking ball before the one we just looked at begins construction in 1893. So this one getting about 15 years worth of usage. Believe that story? I don't. Look at that, hit the double-decker streetcar. So much more to our past, folks. There's so much more to our past than what we've been told. We are capable of so much more. This is the main building for the Ohio State University. Looking again, looking like that same architectural styling as the asylum. And we come now to the end of the file. A YMCA, alphabetical order, always ending with that Y. Alright, Columbus, Ohio, what do you think? Old World Majesty? I appreciate you watching.